saying in the Army, hey, shoot the 25-meter targets first. Worry about the stuff coming down the road later on. The sanctions may impact some of that coming down the road. They may not, but they may. But right now, they need weapon systems, they need ammo, they need long-range systems, and they need a no-fly zone over the Ukraine to allow them to operate, to defend their own country, and to be able to actually stand up to Putin and in negotiations say, hey, we'll accept the unconditional surrender of all the Russian soldiers into Ukraine, and now how can we get along in the future here? They can last inside of those built-up areas, but it is going to be brutal. And they can't last unless we give them better defensive support, better weapons, more ammunition and better ammunition, and the kind of things that they need. But that no-fly zone, I know NATO is a defensive organization, but hey, you don't start defense at your front door. NATO ran a war in Afghanistan. NATO tried to conduct operations in Afghanistan in August, did not do so well at that one. But you start your defense earlier than that. That no-fly zone, I posted about it, a week ago. We should have been doing it. Putin might have had second sort of thoughts before he launched if we had done it.
Okay, you've given us a lot to unpack there, because I do want to start on that very point that you're making around the no-fly zone, because I'm sure you've seen over the last number of days, the U.S. is getting tons of questions. Our government is getting questions. Our allies are getting questions. And the answer has been fairly similar across the table. No, that would be perceived as an escalatory move, and that would definitely ratchet up the war rather than de-escalate it. What is your response to, for example, the Canadian government, which today, just unequivocally said that's a no-go at this point for us?
Hey, we're not putting our actions where our mouth is. We're saying, well, Ukraine has resolved. We're there behind you. We've got the colors of the Ukraine on the Peace Star. Something that's complete assistance short of real help. And what they need is a no-fly zone. What they need are weapons, and what they need are ammunition. And what they need are people to come and fill out that international brigade or brigades that they want to form also to actually fight the Russians that are on the ground right now, those 25-meter targets. Hey, this got escalated when Putin said he was going to invade and then did so. It got escalated when they attacked those infrastructure, those buildings where the civilians are, and it got escalated gets escalated every time there's a Russian tank fighting vehicle or soldier that crosses that border into the Ukraine and attacks and tries to kill somebody. We at some point in time, we're going to face Putin and the Russians over this one. And if we have any hope of ever getting Putin removed from power inside of Russia, the folks that are around him as cronies, I think back to 20 July 1944, when people around Hitler were going to do the same. I'm reminded of that when I see Putin sitting at that long table. We've got to actually show some backbone in the West. I think Canada could lead the way in that one. We do need a no-fly zone. We have the technology, we have the forces, we have the capability to do it, and say very clearly to the Russian people, not just to Putin, here's what we are doing because we cannot accept what's occurring.
There's a lot in there. If I'm hearing him right, he wants Canada to lead the attack on the Russian Air Force. Canada, I like Canada. I like it a lot. I was born here. We are very, very far away from Russia and Ukraine. And our Royal Canadian Air Force fighters, their CF-18 jets, which were first delivered to us in 1983. And then we bought some of Australia's used F-18s when they got rid of them because they were buying new jets. We were supposed to get new jets too, the modern F-35 jet. But Trudeau nixed that. So Rick Hillier wants to send our Canadian CF-18s, almost 40 years old. Next year's the 40th anniversary. And he wants to lead the battle into Ukraine to shoot down any Russian aircraft. That's what a no-fly zone means. No helicopters, no jets. With our CF-18s, I don't even know how they're going to get there. Take a look at these images here. These are actual Russian jets. Russia has some jets from the 80s still in its Air Force. MiG-29s, they're called. But those are the oldest, the worst jets they have. They have many more modern planes, including jets that are meant to rival the latest American jets, the F-35, the F-22. I'm not trying to get technical here. I'm just saying it would be a suicidal errand for little Canada to try to take on the Russian Air Force. Just from a military point of view, a logistics point of view, Russia's right there. Canada's over here. You're not going to win. And the comments about that being some sort of defensive move that NATO should adopt, how is sending Canadian jets into a war between two non-NATO countries a defensive act that could possibly be justified by NATO's charter? You're going to take off from NATO airfields and attack Russia, and you don't think they're going to attack back? You know, there are other former Soviet colonies, thank God they've been liberated now, that have joined NATO: Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania. Did you know they're part of NATO now? One of Putin's complaints is that NATO is trying to encircle Russia. Of course, the response to that is NATO is defensive. Russia doesn't have anything to worry about if it doesn't attack them. These are all countries that Russia has dominated in the past. They have good reason to join a defensive alliance. But how is going in to positively make war against Russia in a non-NATO country like Ukraine, how is that possibly a NATO decision? And did you hear that part about regime change that General Hillier was talking about trying to topple Putin? Listen, I would much rather have a liberal Democrat running Russia, too. I'm not sure how many of those there are, to be honest. Russia feels a bit like an oligarchy, basically run by a group of self-dealing billionaires who wring out the country for political power and wealth and make sure they keep the top dog, Putin, well compensated. I don't know, the closest analogy I can think of is the mafia. Putin is the Tony Soprano character. If you knock off the mob boss, you will get another mob boss to take his place. You're not going to find some John A. MacDonald or some George Washington waiting for his moment to usher in a new era of liberalism and freedom in civil society. Actually, I don't think Russia's ever had such a thing. Regime change, that's your goal? You know, that really hasn't worked out well where it's been tried before by NATO. Afghanistan, an obvious example. Iraq, Libya, toppling Muammar Gaddafi. He was not a nice man, but look what he was replaced with. These examples come to mind. That was done under Obama and Biden as vice president. Imagine trying to do that to Russia itself, the physically largest country in the world, one of the most populous, 150 million people. Rick Hillier has big plans for Russia. Maybe he'll be the governor of Russia. Oh, and then there's the small matter that Russia has nuclear weapons, just that. What's the plan here? If the decision is to punish Russia, to deter Russia, why isn't that being done through non-military means first? Why is the West still buying oil and gas from Russia? That was put to the strategic genius Kamala Harris today. Take a listen.
Is that something that the administration would continue or would consider in terms of further sanctions, cutting off the oil and gas part of the economy for Russia?
Well, as you know, that on this issue, for example, we applaud Germany in terms of what it has done as it relates to Nord Stream 2, as it relates to what we need to do domestically as well as what we need to do in terms of this issue generally. We have, as the President said, reevaluated what we're doing in terms of the strategic oil reserve here in the United States to make sure that it will not have an impact, or we can mitigate the impact on the American consumer. But let's take this one step at a time, understanding that right now on the issue of energy, our allies have stood firm and unified in a way that many of the pundits didn't predict would happen, to ensure that we are unified in our approach to this issue.
Yeah, I don't think she answered the question, did she? Now, look, I sympathize with Ukraine. I oppose Russia. But before we send in our CF-18s to start World War III, shouldn't we, try all peaceful means first? If you're literally buying $1 billion of Russian oil every day, plus the same amount in natural gas, maybe you're not really serious about stopping Russia if you're their number one customer. What's this about? Is it about some sort of new world order? Is it about changing the subject in the world from the pandemic? I don't know. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.